Finally, after over 30 years, the original Little Mermaid story was recognized in the Library of Congress, adding it to their list of historically recognized films based on cultural importance. This list spans over 100 years worth of films, and each one counts as significant importance. With the new announcement of the live-action Little Mermaid, I wanted to go back and retrace the steps of not only how the story was made and the inspiration, but how it became a classic. Besides the obvious reasons of the characters, the making of The Little Mermaid is pretty interesting, and most of us know The Little Mermaid came from the story from Hans Christian Andersen's version of the story of the same name, and I think what a lot of people don't know is the story was a lot darker.
Hey, sis! The old sea witch told us everything.
We had to give her our hair.
But she gave us this to save you with. Catch!
Regardless, when Disney got a hold of this story, it was nice of them to lighten it up a bit. Co-writer and director Ron Clements explained what went through his mind when he came across Hans' version of The Little Mermaid.
And I went out and looked for ideas, and I went into a bookstore and I read The Little Mermaid and got very excited about it and wondered why it had never been done before. And then realized when I got to the end that it was a very sad story where the mermaid dies at the end and loses her prince. But I came up with an idea of a way to make it end in a happier way, wrote up a 2-page treatment, and then when we reconvened 2 weeks later, I pitched The Little Mermaid.
Having an act of writing myself, it was important that the creators repurposed the original story of The Little Mermaid from Hans Christian Andersen's, which is also the reason Frozen became a thing, even though that one was a little more challenging and took over 70 years to create, but that is for another video for another time. Hans Christian Andersen's version of The Little Mermaid was created with a not-so-friendly ending, but of course Disney wanted to change it enough to have that happy ending. Aside from the visual differences of the mermaids with a little more of a historian touch to it, obviously because that story was created in the 1800s. However, even though this version of the story wasn't all that popular, it was brought up again with the Disney touch. In Hans' version, the Little Mermaid never had a name and didn't wear clothes. Obviously, that wasn't going to fly for a children's story. Disney did it right with keeping the same color scheme with the original mermaid, but making it not only more cartoony, but having the long bright red hair with a visually green tail.
I'll swim up to his castle, then Flounder will splash around to get his attention, and then we'll go...
Down here is your home.
So why don't we go through the film and find out where this film went right and what caught people's attention. We start off with the introduction to Eric and talking about mer people, of which humans are not supposed to know about. If you know the story of Ariel's mother, then you know why Triton became obsessed with protecting his 7 daughters, for good reason. As we all know, mer people do exist as we delve deep into the world of Atlantica where most reside. The theme of the film is alienation, unrequited love, and religion. This work is a product of the times in which it was written and a telling of the author's personal struggle. Through the lens of this fairy tale, the viewer is able to contend with their own feelings of separateness in the world. We get introduced to the daughters, or at least most of them.
She's my sister, Ariel.
Ariel?
We quickly learn that Ariel is a very adventurous person, fascinated by the human world and their land. She has a sidekick, of course, Disney is subconsciously creating, but by the sales of the sidekick characters alone, we can assume that they're doing something right by this. In the early phases of this film, we know that there is a father who parents the children by himself. At 16 years old, she is brave in the human world, and learning about it is very important to her, something we see a glimpse of when she risks being bit by the shark grabbing the bag. Then we get introduced to Scuttle, a funny character but didn't really stick out as much as Sebastian or Flounder.
It's a dingle.
Characters are born from intention and obstacle. The intention here is Ariel's love for the human world, but her father is strictly against even a single thought, taking the obstacle being her own father. Regardless, she still finds a way to get what she wants. The story is told by having an identity crisis, something that can be relatable at this age. Even though the audience it was intended was for the younger generation, however, kids and adults of all ages grew to love Ariel and her story. This is being because of the musical score and falling in love with the different species and risking everything to be with that person. Later we get a glimpse that she has been collecting human stuff for a while now. The inciting incident, as we writers like to call it, comes in when she gets involved in the shipwreck after the sudden storm. A storm sweeps in, lightning strikes, and the ship begins to go under. Ariel, who was watching the prince most intently, sees that he has been knocked unconscious. She at first plans to take him home to her collection, but she realizes he would die underwater. Sebastian is hesitant when he sees her on land with Eric and does his best throughout the film to be on Triton's side, and of course Scuttle is all for it. We also get to see Ursula's plan in taking advantage of Ariel during this time.
She may be the key to Triton's undoing.
After Triton finds out about Ariel being in love with a human, the exposition moves further, making the father yet another obstacle Ariel has to face, other than purely being a mermaid and not being able to live on land. Flounder is not only Ariel's best friend, but her only supporting character as of yet. He is encouraging because he sees her happy. Then comes a resolution to her problem, but not without consequences. We get to see more of the villain and the way she portrays herself. The rules of the 3 days is something that is another obstacle for Ariel, an obstacle that the audience must keep an eye on as well. She agrees because it's what she wants the most. She's persuaded very easily, and this portion of the story moves quickly. The second half of the film comes in, and we get to follow Ariel in her new life with legs instead of a fin. The prince instantly recognizes her, and then comes the midpoint, which is also known as Act 2. She got what she wanted, but without one key detail. There's terms in order to make it permanent. And not only that, but another obstacle she's facing. Not only is the story and characters mesmerizing and memorable, but there are lessons that can be learned from this. One being, doing something in the heat of the moment isn't always a good thing or can result in something good. For example, Triton destroyed everything in Ariel's grotto, and when she made her deal with Ursula, doing something in the heat of the moment doesn't always pay off. Communication between parents is also something to look at with this film. Triton refused to listen to Ariel regarding her curiosity in the world above, and Ariel didn't heed her father's warnings, no matter how many times he issued them. Ariel felt misunderstood, and King Triton was frustrated and annoyed with his youngest daughter for not listening to him, resulting in the ending outcome.
We'll keep looking. Leave no shell unturned, no coral unexplored. Let no one in this kingdom sleep until she's safe at home. Oh, what have I done?
The first day as Ariel is exploring the kingdom, she becomes fascinated with the most random things. However, this is the time to get serious as there is a mission to be done. This is of course where Sebastian takes things into his own hands, but not before Ursula ruins it. Similar to Hans Christian Andersen's version of The Little Mermaid, Ursula comes on land herself and tricks Eric into thinking she is the one who he saw after the shipwreck. But instead of Ariel dying, she is determined not to give up before time runs out, and even when it does, she still doesn't give up. Disney's version portrays a more censored moral. One is able to achieve true happiness and acceptance by undergoing extreme change for the one they love. Through minor sacrifice and patience during said change, eventually they will gain the love and respect for those that they changed for. And even with everything that happens, Triton eventually comes to terms that this is what Ariel wants regardless of consequences. At the same time, he trusts that she will be safe. With the new 2023 live action being announced, there was some controversy of the main character casting, but I wanted to talk more on what they would have to include in the film in order for it to be successful. Of course, there are memorable moments from the songs that anybody could recognize: Under the Sea, Part of Your World, and Poor Unfortunate Souls. When delving into the story, it's not something that is necessarily relatable, which is one reason why some films succeed, but the side characters and watching Ariel carry out her journey to something that she really wants. So the desire and determination she has is why people were on her side. We were watching her grow as a person, and even though she went behind her father's back, for good reason, it was Ariel's determination that drove audiences to her and the challenges she faced.
Do you think I want to see my youngest daughter snared by some fish-eater's hook?
I'm 16 years old. I'm not a child
Don't you
anymore.
take that tone of voice with me, young lady!
With a lot of films, some might assume its success came from the people attached to it and what they are known for. For example, Tim Burton and his creative mind behind the recent success of Wednesday. In reality, over time, this film became a classic just from people continuously talking about it more and more. The songs, the happy ending, and all-around beauty that captured audiences' attention for years and still to this day was the reason for its continued success and recognition.